Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Trail Talk. I'm Edie coming to you live from the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center. We're again in our classroom studio. That's kind of been our favorite place lately. I'm sure you've noticed that. But we have an interesting show for you today. But before we get started, I want to see if you guys have been following the Olympics, because the camera person and Tina and I were just talking about many of the people that we introduced you to last week who have been competing in this year's Olympics have had a lot of success. Katie Nye, the weightlifter, won a silver medal. Kenny Bednarik, I don't know if I should, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what happens with Kenny Bednarik, turn your volume down because they haven't shown the race on TV yet, but he wins a silver medal in the 200. Woohoo! And last night I was watching the women's volleyball team, and Micah Hancock played the entire set, and the U.S. women won, and she is phenomenal. She's actually a setter, and she is so good. And I mean, I know there were others that we talked about, but those three, I was able to actually watch them, and I was so excited. So anyway, enough about that. I didn't bring any Olympic cheerleading gear today, so I'm going to stick with the program, and I'm going to talk to you today about Oklahoma Inventors and Inventions, and this is Volume 3. So interestingly enough, the four men I'm going to introduce you to today, so some of them you probably have heard of. Only three of them, well, only one of them was actually born in Oklahoma, but the others really called Oklahoma their home, or it's where they lived when they were inventing things. And so we're going to claim them as Oklahoma inventors. So let me first start you off. I'm going to introduce you to Earl P. Halliburton. Now here in Duncan, everybody knows the name Earl P. Halliburton because Halliburton is a staple in our community. Halliburton has been in Duncan for, let me see, probably since the 1920-ish. Well, let's see, there was a couple of years ago was the 75th, was it the 100th anniversary? Now I can't remember, maybe it was 1919. It seems like we had, yeah, it was like we had the 100th anniversary celebration of Halliburton as a organization. And so, yeah, Halliburton's been around for a while. And, you know, I know that the name Halliburton doesn't like ring true in everyone's heart, but the company all in all has done a lot for the community of Duncan, for surrounding communities, and has touched the lives of many people, my family included. My husband has been an employee at Halliburton for 40 years. So it's, you know, it's a part of a lot of people's lives. They're far reaching as far as people and families in Duncan. But Earl Halliburton, Earl P. Halliburton, there's a statue of him in a little park on Highway 81 here in Duncan. He was born in Tennessee, and his father died when he was young, and he found himself supporting his whole family. So then at the age of 14, he left home to find other work and then joined the Navy in 1910 when he was 18 years old. He was discharged in 1915. And he went to work for the Perkins Oil Well Cementing Company in the California oil fields. Well, Earl P. Halliburton was a man of ingenuity. And so he had a lot of what he considered to be very valuable ideas. But every time he presented his ideas, he was kind of met with a stone wall, I guess you could say. They didn't want to hear it. And so all of his ideas for improving were so unwelcome and yet so constant that he eventually got fired. But he would be the first to tell you the two best things that ever happened to him were being hired by the Perkins Company, Oil Well Cementing Company, and being fired by the Perkins Oil Well Cementing Company. So I'm sure he learned a lot about himself and about the cementing, the way they were cementing and everything. And so anyway, that part is history. Shortly after that, he moved to Burnt Texas with his wife, Vida, and they were in the mid-continent region. That's kind of oil basin or gas basin talk. Gas, oil, I don't know. Anyway, it's an area where there's a lot of petroleum under the ground. And so he introduced oil well cementing to the drillers in that district and hoped to make a name for himself. He worked tirelessly. He borrowed equipment to hire people. They even pawned Vida's wedding ring. I mean, they were working with nothing, but he was convinced he had a good idea. I guess, you know, he was right too. But anyway, I mean, I even heard stories about how she would rewash the cement bags so they could use them over and over again, so they wouldn't have to purchase new ones, and they would hand fill them. They were a team. Earl and Vida were definitely a team. Anyway, he got his big break when Skelly Oil hired him to control a wild well in south central Oklahoma, and that gave him the chance to prove the cementing services. And in 1919, he founded the company of Halliburton, and let's see, yeah, just Halliburton Company. And soon the new and improved method of oil cementing was becoming a household name throughout Oklahoma and Texas. And as you know, Halliburton is a worldwide organization now. And cementing is still a part of what they do, probably the biggest part. You know, Halliburton doesn't drill the wells, but they provide the cementing services that make drilling the more efficient process that it is today. And I just know some of that because through the years, my husband's worked with cementing in different parts of the company. And so I've heard a lot of these things, but we are so glad that Earl Halliburton started Halliburton, and that he was so driven to do the things that he believed were important for this industry. He was granted 38 patents. Let's look at this next picture real quick. I thought this was the coolest picture. Of course, this is some of the old time oil field worker equipment and all this stuff. One of the original Halliburton trucks. I mean, look at this thing. This is not state of the art like what they have today. This just shows you how hard they worked and what the company came from. 38 patents for oil field services and tools, and several miscellaneous inventions, making the Halliburton Oil Well Cementing Company's Duncan Operations Center a mainstay in the Oklahoma economy. He died in 1957, but he was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, the Permian Basin Petroleum Museum Hall of Fame, and also the Oklahoma Aviation Hall of Fame for innovations in the aviation industry, which I thought was interesting. But he had, I mean, you know that someone who is continuously thinking of things, he was probably inventing things in his head all the time. And so anyway, we thank you, Earl P. Halliburton, for your contribution to oil field services, Duncan as a community, and many, many families. And let's take the aviation part and segue into the next person, none other than Wiley Post. Wiley Post is an interesting fella. So he was actually born in Texas, but we forgive him because he moved to Oklahoma and called Oklahoma home. He was one of 5 children, His father was a cotton farmer, and the whole family worked on the farm together. But Wiley was never very interested in that. He was not really interested in schoolwork either, though. He just really liked to play with his friends. And what little boy doesn't? I mean, really? But, Wiley did finish elementary school, and he completed the 7th grade. In 1920, his parents settled on a farm near Maysville. So, by 1920. So he had moved around several places in Oklahoma. But anyway, in 1913, prior to the move to Maysville, at the county fair in Lawton, Oklahoma, Wiley Post saw his very first airplane. And that changed his life. He enrolled in the Sweeney Automobile and Aviation School in Kansas City. And this was a 7-month program. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it was very thorough, but I guess maybe in the early 1900s, things weren't as detailed or involved. I mean, there was no, electronic kind of things going on. So it was basic instruments. So anyway, a 7-month course, and he excelled in science and math. Maybe Wiley just needed to grow up a little bit to get interested enough to study. But whatever the case, he left the school, came back to Oklahoma and worked for the Chickasaw and Lawton construction companies. During World War I, Wiley wanted to become a pilot for the U.S. Army Air Service. This was before the Air Force branch of the military was formed. And so they were known as the U.S. Army Air Service. So he entered training camp at the University of Oklahoma, but he never was able to join the Air Service because Germany surrendered and World War I ended. So he went to work as a roughneck. Now, according to my research, there's some sketchy information, maybe not a lot of information over the next few years of Wiley's life. There is one story that he didn't just have academic problems, but he also was arrested for armed robbery and had to spend time in prison, a year in prison in the state reformatory. But after that, he was back in the oil fields and worked for the Burrell Tibbs Flying Circus on the side. He still loved aviation. He started out as a parachute jumper, and then he learned to fly. Then in 1926, he was injured in the oil field when a piece of metal got in his eye, his left eye, and the infection caused him to lose sight in that eye. So he had some basic aviation training, but all the things he went on to do, he did with only being able to see out of one eye, which I find to be such an encouragement, such a testament to someone's desire to make goals and achieve those goals and to work really hard and to not let something people might consider a disability stand in his way. It did not alter his ability to go on and become one of the greatest aviators of all time. So he got some money from a settlement from the injury that happened, kind of like a workman's compensation kind of thing, and bought his first airplane and got married. And then he damaged that airplane, so he sold it. And then he was hired on as a pilot for an oil man named Florence Hall. And then in 1928, Hall bought a Lockheed Vega and christened it the Winnie Mae after his daughter. And then eventually he bought another and also named it Winnie Mae. Wiley's rise to fame was when he won an air race between Chicago and Los Angeles. In 1931, he and a navigator flew around the top of the world in the Winnie Mae from New York City to New York City in less than 9 days. Wow. And then in 1933, Post shattered that record with a time of 7 days, 18 hours, and 49 minutes. Then after breaking these, flying around the world, now it wasn't like the center of the earth. It was New York City to New York City. So it was the upper part. But he wanted to fly in high altitudes. Well, the Winnie Mae did not have a pressurized cabin. So that was a problem. So what did Wiley Post do? He invented a pressurized flight suit. And that invention allowed him to go up into high altitudes. Now, the original flight suit, he invented it in 1934, I believe. And he, let me see if this says for sure. Anyway, the Goodrich Company assisted him in creating this flight suit. And so he was able to fly at high altitudes and do some experimentation with that. The one cool thing about that flight suit is all of the basic ideas that he put into the structure and how that flight suit would work is what they have used ever since, even NASA for astronauts, that it's still the same basic idea that Wiley Post came up with. But then in 1935, Wiley was flying a constructed hybrid float plane, and he wanted to test it with a long distance flight. So he called up his good friend, Will Rogers, and the two of them were in, they were in Alaska and planning to fly around to Siberia. But the Orion was aerodynamically unstable, and shortly after takeoff in the fog on August the 15th, that day's coming up, 1935, Wiley lost control of the aircraft. It crashed, and Wiley Post and Will Rogers were both tragically killed in that accident. Very sad for the world. I mean, who knows what kind of amazing things Wiley Post could have gone on to invent. And, Will Rogers was such of course he was a humorist, but he was just a goodwill ambassador to people all around the world. And we should always be grateful for the people that have gone before us and left a legacy like these two did. But the Winnie Mae, it is displayed at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. So that's cool. So if you want to go see the Winnie Mae, go check it out there. Okay, the next person is a man named Arthur Jones. Now, this is a very scowling picture of Mr. Jones, and maybe you've never heard of him, but I bet you've heard of what he invented. He invented Nautilus exercise equipment. The things that are all multiple workout things all in one structure. This was his idea. So he was born in Arkansas, but then moved to Seminole, Oklahoma. Now, his father was a doctor. His mother went to college and graduated and became a doctor after they moved to Seminole. In all, there were 14 people in his immediate family who were in the medical profession, but Arthur Jones was not interested. In fact, he wasn't even interested in school. So he left home in his early teens and began traveling around North and Central America, and then joined the military during World War II. Now, he later became interested in exotic animals. And I know this kind of sounds like a crazy little jaunt in this story, but it was a lifelong interest of his. And he would go to places like Africa and gather exotic animals. I mean, not like Joe Exotic, I don't think. I didn't see anything like that. But anyway, That's another story. So then he produced television shows and movies and things like that. His interest in weight training actually began in the 1930s when he was a teenager. In 1939, this would have been prior to him joining the military in World War II. Okay. He welded hooks to his barbells that allowed him to add chains to either end. And so that meant he could vary resistance throughout his exercise workout. And this theory of using varying stages of resistance and varying, I guess, degrees of resistance, that's what kind of set the Nautilus equipment apart from other exercise equipment of its day. In the 40s, he and another fellow started building this exercise equipment in a YMCA in Tulsa. Now, he wasn't like an exercise junkie himself. I think from reading about him, he must have just really liked the idea of creating exercise equipment or having these great ideas, having these theories. He just wasn't really prone to be the one to, I guess you'd say he wasn't promoting his exercise equipment with his own physique. He was just more like the brains behind it. He was, yeah. Anyway, so in the 60s, fast forward to the 1960s, so he was still chasing this exotic animal dream thing that he had, and his business interests and wealth were decimated by a string of conflicts that were raging across Africa in those days. He was living in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and he had to leave there and come back to the United States. And that's when he really got fixated on this varying resistance workout kind of thing. And this is when the Nautilus equipment really came about. He introduced his first machines to the American public in 1970. I found a picture of an older machine. This one could be a little more updated, but I mean, if you go, like, say, to the Simmons Center here in Duncan or any gym, exercise gym, there is a variation of this machine somewhere in that gym, maybe multiple variations, because this one you can tell this is like something you do with your arms, I'm getting, you know, or something. But you can adjust the weights, and there's just this whole apparatus that he really created all that. And his promotion, his mantra was total exercise cannot be provided by conventional exercise equipment. He said, your muscles can be worked harder, but with much less fatigue. And that meant that the Nautilus workout could require much less time to complete. And who doesn't like a faster workout, right? So his high intensity training revolution was premised on this whole idea. And so that is the story of Arthur Jones and Nautilus equipment. I mean, this is really the face of workout equipment. And I mean, you know, things have really gone a lot more technology driven today with, you know, you program the resistance, but the whole idea of resistance training and muscles working differently, whether you're pushing or pulling, and different muscles getting a workout, that is still very important to people, you know, the whole workout plan. And so, you know, well done, Arthur Jones, and, you know, proud to say you're from Oklahoma. All right, now the last person I want to introduce you to is named Bob Dunn. And Bob Dunn is a musician who was born in Fort Gibson here in Oklahoma. And he didn't invent, you can see he's playing this guitar that's laying on his lap, and he has a steel bar in this hand that he runs up and down the strings on the guitar, and then you pluck instead of strum. And that's how you play the steel guitar. Well, you know, they created later in the, I don't even know like when, but I remember it was looked kind of like a keyboard kind of shape. It didn't have the neck out here, you know, it wasn't really shaped like a guitar. This is what the original steel guitar was like, and it wasn't that the guitar itself was made of steel, it was the steel bar that was run up and down the strings on the neck. So what Bob Dunn did is, well, this was called, the original was called the Hawaiian guitar. It was actually invented in Hawaii. And if you think about Hawaiian music, there's a distinct sound that Hawaiian music has. And that steel guitar, I mean, that's that sound. But what Bob Dunn did is, what Dunn did, I just made myself laugh on that one, sorry. What Bob Dunn did is he took this instrument and changed the way you play it to create a whole new sound. And this is his invention, is a different way to play the steel guitar. And he played with a lot of bands, Milton Brown and the Musical Brownies. That might be one of your favorites. He also, I was trying to find right here, played with, he had a band called Bob Dunn's Vagabonds, but it was originally Cliff Bruner's Texas Wanderers. There's another one you guys might know about. Bill Mounts and the Sons of the South. I mean, he did a lot of recordings with a lot of different people. But here's the thing about his style. It was unique among steel guitarists because he was an admirer of a trombonist named Jack Teagarden. And so he took a similar approach to his soloing, using horn-like phrasing, far, far different from the Hawaiian style. So you know how on a trombone, you know, it's back and forth. Was that not a trombone sound? I don't know. Anyway, but you know what I'm talking about, how you drag out the sound and back. That was Bob Dunn's style, and it gave it more of a jazz sound, and so it made it much more modern as, you know, music was evolving. The more modern sound became very popular, and so the steel guitar was able to be adapted to a lot of different musical styles. Of course, Western music steel guitar is a big part of Western music. But anyway, Bob Dunn is credited with kind of bringing the Hawaiian guitar into a less of a Hawaiian sound, the original sound, and modernizing it. And so anyway, we're glad you did that, Bob Dunn, because I've always been a fan of the steel guitar. So that concludes our trail talk today of Oklahoma Inventors and Inventions. Tomorrow, we are going to have Hodgson Studios here, and we're going to have some young performers who are students in that studio. Veronica Hodgson is going to be here. She's the owner, and we're very excited to have them on the show. I hope you plan to tune in. It should be very entertaining. And thanks a lot, guys, for watching Trail Talk today. I'll see you all tomorrow. And you ready, Stefan? Happy trails.